So, what are we worth? Found out yesterday that according to the great state of New York, that my younger brother is worth virtually nothing. That his life is worth nothing. Um, if you recall, Brian, at 58 years old, was sitting in his car, ready to at a stop, ready to turn into the parking lot of his job one morning in November of 2018 when a double axle truck owned by Craft Power Facilities uh, hit him, rear ended him with no attempt to stop. The driver of the Craft Power Facilities vehicle said that he had fallen asleep. Hit Brian, rear-ended him, and drove him into the oncoming lines of oncoming traffic, where he was hit twice broadside. Once, the first time, spun him, and then he was hit again, and he was killed. Uh, Sadly, yeah, we have the video evidence. On the road, there was a small military base, and so the road was under video surveillance, and you can see it. I've watched it a number of times, and sadly, watched as my brother sat just one morning going to work, and I see the truck come in from Craft Power Facilities, slam into the back end of him, never comes to stop. He continues through Brian as if nothing, and watch my brother get hit twice. But here's where you start to wonder about what we measure and what the measure of a man really is. Uh, Look, none of us are perfect. Uh, my younger brother was not a perfect man in any way. He had lots of faults and frailties, as we all do. I have said recently how glad I am that our God sees us as He sees us, not as we see ourselves. Uh, Brian was killed. He left a fiance, devastated. He left two sons, four grandchildren. He was not close to his sons and grandchildren as he should have been, but was reestablishing those contacts. Uh, his death absolutely devastated our mother. I got to sit with Mom and explain to her that her son had died, uh, and watch as she wailed, not screamed, not cried out, but wailed, and sat with her for almost 2 days as she just kept wondering why her baby boy died, her youngest. And then watched as that sadly helped her decline over her last 7 months of life, and led very, very much to a very terrible last 7 months for my mom. Now, Craft Power Facilities is a pretty big outfit. They have plants all over the place, I think in 5 or 6 different states. They have a plant outside of Syracuse, New York, where the accident happened. Their corporate offices are in Woburn, Massachusetts. Uh, I wanted to contact their president, Owen Duffy, just to see. And then I realized that Owen Duffy, as the president of Craft Power Facilities, he doesn't know anything about this, nor does he care. Craft Power Facilities and their insurers are supposed to protect the fiduciary responsibility of their company. Brian was a laborer, common laborer. And when, according to New York state law, because he didn't have a wife at the time, just a fiance, and because his children were not dependent on him, his value, according to New York State, as a human being, amounts to what he could, I guess, keeping it simple, what you could expect him to be worth at the end of a normal lifespan. They consider that, and they look at it and they say, well, he was minimum wage, or no, he wasn't minimum wage. He was actually a skilled machinist, but he was a machinist, and he didn't have any assets, and You figure if he was 58, he retires at 65, and then he goes on Social Security, and his living expenses and everything, and craft power facilities, and their insurers think he wouldn't have any more than maybe $50,000 left, and that of course would have to pay off his debts from his estate, which he had no estate. But he had debts. So the government, our government, measures Brian with a dollar figure, and unfortunately, I had hoped, as the executor of his estate, that I could not only pay off his debts, but I was, he was really interested in reestablishing his relationship with his sons, and making a good relationship with his children. When this tragedy took place, I thought, okay, maybe there can be enough in the estate after this that the insurance company, my God, we have it on video. If we have it on video, I'll be glad to show it to anybody who wants to see it. And the man has admitted to falling asleep in the company truck. He was on his way to work. Not looking at some ridiculous sum, but I thought that we would be able to settle maybe for an amount that that the estate could pay off Brian's debts, and maybe give each son $75,000 so that they could use it for down payment on a nice home for their families in the future. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm not sure how, and I don't know. But anyways, but how do we value life anymore in this country? How do we look at it? I prefer the fact that our God has established the measure of us. It's not established by New York State or the U.S. government or anybody else. It's established by God himself, because God is the one who knitted us in the womb. God is the one who knew us before we were born. Not only did the measure of us be established, was it not only established by our God, but then it was verified by his Son when Jesus came to earth and sacrificed his own life for our lives. That's verification of exactly what we're worth. And craft power facilities and New York State and the insurance company may not think that Brian Timmons was worth anything. I beg to differ that our God has established what he was worth, and that was verified by his Son. And I would much rather look at that. The terror that this put my family through. His fiance is devastated by this. They were getting married in January. This happened in November. It's sad, so they never got to get married. So how do you value that? Watching my mother, no parent is supposed to, you don't expect it to go before one of your children, certainly not your youngest. And to see how that devastated a very faith-filled woman was very hard on the family. But it doesn't seem to matter. And then, what struck me is just recently I see a picture of the Golden Globes, and I saw some of the, I listened to some of the award winners talking. And I see a woman holding a golden idol. I'm sorry, we'll call it a golden trophy. And she explained that if she wouldn't have had an abortion, she wouldn't have been able to live the life she lived that led her to being able to win and she was clutching this golden statue. And I thought that may be just exactly how we value life in this country anymore. She was clutching that golden statue as if it was more important than the life that was growing within her, a life that was established by our God and verified by Christ. But that golden statue, golden idol, was far more important. And this is often the case anymore. And I see some of these things that are happening, but I just like to mention the fact that this has happened, kind of the denouement of my younger brother's life, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do what I had hoped to be able to do for his sons and his grandsons, or grandsons and daughters. I'm the only one that only has grandsons. He actually had a couple granddaughters too. But I was hoping to be able to give them, a legacy of Brian that just would have meant something to him, a home, something that Brian sadly did not give to those boys throughout his life. But maybe he could make it up to them now that they were grown men with their own families. That's not going to happen. But I do want you all to know that the measure of a man is not set by Owen Duffy and Kraft Power Facilities and insurance companies and New York State and the law. It's not set by that. The measure of a man has been established by our God and instilled in us. And then he sent his son. And his son died for us to reestablish our measure in our God's heart. That's the measure of Brian Timmons. And I want you to know that's your measure too. So if you ever feel down and you feel like you don't measure up to anything on this earth, remember that God sees you as you are, not as we see ourselves, and that he's given you the measure and then sent verification for that. That's an incredible amount of love, and worth so much more than golden idols. But I love you all, and I hope this maybe means something to somebody. Thank you all. Bye-bye.